NGSS has 3 dimensions built into each standard: the science and engineering practices, or what the students are expected to do, the cross-cutting concepts, how the students are expected to think, and the disciplinary core ideas, what the students are expected to know. I really appreciate this image from the Smithsonian Science Institute, where the 3 dimensions weave together to make a rope. Just as a rope is stronger with more braids in it, learning is stronger with more dimensions in it. And in this session, we are going to explore how 3-dimensional learning is stronger. Before NGSS developed performance expectations, this McKenzie standard was normal for science standards. Reading through it, I noticed a lot of content about inheritance of traits and how some traits can be influenced by the environment. The verb at the beginning is know, and I distinctly remember these vague verbs, know, understand, being a source of contention in grade-level planning meetings. We would bring out Rosano's taxonomy or Bloom's and argue about what complexity we thought students should demonstrate their knowledge or understanding. The content is crystal clear. I know what to teach, but I don't have a clue of how to get students to show it just from the standard. Additionally, standards like this propose that science is just a regurgitation of facts and information. A physicist's job isn't to recite information about the conservation of energy and energy transfer. Rather, they use their understanding of the conservation of energy and energy transfer to carry out investigations into novel questions and analyze data to explain previously unexplained phenomena. So, to prepare our students to be scientists, they need to know more than just facts, but they also need to know the skills to engage in scientific inquiry. Now let's look at a McKenzie standard versus NGSS standards. We're going to compare them based on their dimensions. Looking at the disciplinary core idea, or the content, the McKenzie and the NGSS standards mirror each other. They're both about inherited traits and environmental traits. Where the NGSS standards level up is the practice. The McKenzie's verb is to know, but these 2 NGSS standards have students analyzing and interpreting data and constructing explanations about what effects traits have on an organism. And lastly, we can see in the concept lens that the students are having to use 2 different concepts: patterns and cause and effect. Concepts helped our students move past memorization and use their frameworks to understand novel phenomena. So we can really see the dimensions in these standards. It's very clear what the students need to do to show mastery of the content, so there is no need to argue over the level of complexity. It is easier to see the implications of 1-dimensional standards versus 3-dimensional standards once we look at assessments. This is an example of a 1-dimensional standard assessment, where students are purely asked to identify which category a trait goes into. Is it inherited, environmental, or both? Pure disciplinary core idea or content knowledge. Now we're going to go through a 3-dimensional assessment. This one targets the 3-LS 3-1 standard about analyzing and interpreting data to provide evidence that plants and animals have traits inherited from parents and that variations of traits in this group exists. So the context or phenomena that the students are provided with is about a wild horse family. They're helping rangers of a national park that's nearby in Mexico assess whether or not these horses that are interacting could be part of a family based on their traits. So here we've gone a little bit more in detail so the students really understand what their role is in this assessment. We provide the parts of the horse, which are, external traits. We do not expect that students will use the term muzzle. We much more expect that they will call it a horse nose. Yet we do feel it's important to support our students with vocabulary, especially as they are learning English as an additional language. Next, we prompt the students to look at the data. The standard clearly asks students to analyze and interpret data. So our first step is to prompt them to look at the data available in this picture, to be able to extract information about the different body parts, the colors that they're seeing, and the size and the weight of the different horses that are interacting in this group. They then take that information and organize it into a table. NGSS does not dictate what form the students need to use to analyze data. It could be a bar graph, line graph, tally chart, can be as complex and as simplistic as you decide. Really, it's about getting students to make some decisions for themselves and to get used to handling data in different formats. Then we prompt along the concept. So we're asking students to observe patterns, and we give them some sentence stems to prompt them with the language. So what's similar about the horses, and a sentence that's going to provide them the structure to talk about what is similar. Then what's different, giving them a sentence stem that's going to allow them to then discuss differences. Lastly, we provide a rubric showing the 3 dimensions clearly. So on the left-hand column, it shows the practices, the concepts, and the DCI, and then clear criteria for what a not yet, an approaching, and a meeting would be. So now that we've had the opportunity to compare a one-dimensional assessment against a 3-dimensional assessment, I want you to think back to your reflection in the intro video and think, does the differences between those assessments mirror what you thought would happen with changing from a one-dimensional science structure to a 3-dimensional science structure?